This is Heavenscape Year 1, the Strathmore Chronicles, brought to you by Saturday Night Gaming, the Strathmore Chronicles, written by Tony and Jessica Stevens, narrated by Tony Stevens. Gloom. Episode 1, The Fog of War. Arthur Strathmore should have been dead. He knew he was supposed to be dead because every bone in his body felt broken. Every muscle and sinew felt torn. His skin felt raw, and there was a searing pain behind his right eye. Strathmore had served as a combat officer in the Elorian military his entire life, and he had never felt pain like this. He knew he should be dead, but he couldn't remember why. He simply knew his existence felt wrong. This thought didn't particularly disturb him, not like it should have. Arthur groaned and opened his eyes. Immediately he could tell that his field of vision was compromised. And he grimaced, attempting to focus on his surroundings. The action shot searing pain through the right side of his face. He reached up slowly, fully expecting to find a massive piece of shrapnel jutting out from his eye. Instead, he felt a tidy eye patch, covered by a small bandage. "Try not to touch it too much," a quiet, calm voice spoke from his right side, now his blind side. Strathmore grunted and sat up slowly, forcing himself to move through the excruciating pain. His immediate surroundings were dimly lit by a small window close to a low ceiling of rough, wooden beams. Beside him, a slender man watched him from a hammock, his hands resting lightly on his knees. His eyes were ancient, and they appraised Strathmore with vague curiosity. The man's ears were long and pointed, and his skin was blue.
"Blue skin? Pointed ears? That's not right."
But Arthur couldn't remember why. Behind the man, 2 rows of hammocks disappeared into the gloom, all occupied. Small lanterns affixed to the ceiling swayed gently and did little to illuminate the passengers. The air was heavy, and the stench of the wounded and dying men was almost tangible.
"Do you recall how you came to be here?"
the man asked in a calm voice. A thick bandage wrapped around his torso, and he shifted his shoulders occasionally, as if to work out a kink in his back. Arthur Strathmore frowned as he tried to remember. He had been somewhere different before. He looked around his dim surroundings, adjusting to the restricted field of vision on his right side. He had a brief and sudden flash of metal corridors and bright lights, but he had no idea what it meant.
"This place is wrong. I was somewhere else before,"
he muttered.
"Where are we? Who are you?"
He observed his own rising panic as if from a distance. He couldn't really feel it.
"We are on a boat, and we have just arrived at a port. You can see from the window."
The blue man gestured towards the porthole near the ceiling.
"My name is Vel. I am a moon elf, and I do not know how I arrived here either."
Arthur struggled out of his hammock and made his way to the window, careful not to hit his head on the rough wooden beams. Outside the small window, a dingy port was barely visible through the thick layer of fog.
"Well, I don't know what an elf is, but if you're the one who patched up my eye, then thanks."
He turned away from the window and extended his hand.
Arthur Strathmore."
Vel raised one eyebrow and cocked his head to one side. He made no move to stand up or extend his arm.
"What's the matter, boy?"
Strathmore growled.
"You don't understand the social graces? Where I come from, when a man extends his hand, it is rude not to shake it."
Just then, a hatch creaked open a few feet away, and light poured down. illuminating a small wooden ladder. Strathmore reached for his hip instinctively, but there was nothing there. He scowled. Why did he do that? What was he looking for? Something was missing. Vel cleared his throat. "Your weapon is there." He pointed to the deck below Arthur's hammock. A very long, very large bundle was wrapped neatly and tucked into the shadows. Arthur knelt down and folded back the wrappings.
"It seemed best to conceal it. It clearly has magical properties. Even my people could not have forged such a weapon."
Arthur Strathmore grasped the hilt of the massive claymore and hefted the weapon into the light. He felt his injuries fade, just a bit. This must be the thing he had misplaced. It was warm and alive in his hands, and he felt almost whole. His arm began to sting and burn, and he noticed for the first time that his right forearm was covered by a thick bandage. He turned and motioned to Vel. The moon elf finally stood, unfolding himself slowly and gracefully from the hammock. He draped a dark, dingy cloak around his shoulders, and they made their way cautiously up the ladder, Strathmore tense and ready for battle. There was no one on the deck. Arthur slowly sheathed the blade onto his back, and the two men got the first look at their surroundings. A heavy fog loomed over the dreary port. A long, narrow dock was barely visible through the dense mist. People wandered aimlessly. Some called out in search of loved ones, but the fog drank their cries. The only sounds were the creaking of the boat and the slapping of the dark gray water against the grimy sand of the nearby shore.
"How long have we been here, Vel?"
"Well, Arthur." Vel brought his hands together in front of him, fingertips touching. "Time is a relative concept. In some places, the sun rises and sets. In other places, they have 26-hour days. But here I see no moon and no sun." Vel gestured at the sky, obscured by mist. His cloak fell away to reveal an intricate tattoo covering his right arm. A lazy lynx reclined across his forearm, paws resting near his wrist. It was so detailed that it seemed alive. Strathmore grunted.
"Huh. So you got no idea either. Great."
Together, the companions approached the shore. Their footsteps echoed eerily on the dock. As they moved through the crowd, the people drifted aimlessly through the dense fog and did not seem to notice the two men. The sound of the water faded and was replaced by the shuffling of boots on the cobblestones. No other sounds could be heard. Time seemed to have no meaning in this place. The soft, muffled scraping of dozens of boots grated on Arthur's nerves.
"What is this place?"
An angry shout broke the silence, and a grin cracked the old warrior's face.
"Finally, some action."
Arthur Strathmore ran through the fog toward the shouting, shoving aside the mindless, shuffling strangers. Up ahead, an old man was sprawled on the ground. He was emaciated and withered, but he was still breathing. Two heavily armored guards loomed over the man with their weapons drawn. A small, slender man was standing protectively between the guards and the helpless man on the ground. His hair was dripping wet, and his clothes clung to his body. Just behind the old man stood two females in leather armor, an enormous wolf, and a strange man in a wide black hat and a long black cloak. Vel put out a hand to stop Arthur.
"Be careful, friend."
He spoke calmly but firmly.
"This black armor is filled with shadows, not men." "What do you mean, shadows? Use plain English, boy,"
the warrior grunted. The elven sorcerer spoke in a strange, quiet language, and his eyes began to glow bright white.
I can see the currents of life force energies flowing through the area.
He spoke as if from far away.
The magic imbued within the Dark Soldiers is different than anything I've ever encountered.
Strathmore grimaced at the guards.
Different? How? Where the guards are standing is an angry, roiling blackness, obscuring their true forms.
A shadow of terror passed over the elf's face. Just then, strange voices began to echo in Arthur's head.
It is time. You have been chosen.